The bill to prevent British Prime Minister Boris Johnson from taking Britain out of the European Union without a deal with Brussels was given royal assent on Monday by Queen Elizabeth II. Schools in the Democratic Republic of Congo are taking measures to strengthen hygiene in a bid to protect students from Ebola virus after new school term opened on September 2nd. Oil prices rose on Monday as investors' lingering worries about oversupply were temporarily eased. That's all for our top stories today. Stay tuned for more details in this newscast.
The bill to prevent British Prime Minister Boris Johnson from taking Great Britain out of the European Union without a deal with Brussels was given a royal assent on Monday by the Queen Elizabeth II. The signing came after the House of Commons and House of Lords on Wednesday and Friday passed the so-called no-deal legislation ahead of its planning suspension. It means Johnson now has to go to the European Council meeting of leaders on October 17 to seek an extension to Britain's membership of the bloc until January unless a deal is in place. Brief announcements were made in both houses of parliament to inform politicians that the bill had now become law and entered the status books. The bill is aiming at tying Johnson's hand after he entered 10 Downing Street, saying he would take Britain out of the European Union on October 31st with or without a deal. The Guardian in London reported that at a Monday briefing with journalists, Downing Street insisted Johnson will refuse to request a Brexit extension till January, even though legislation passed last week, and the royal assent later today would require him to do this. The Prime Minister is not going to seek for an extension. If MPs want to resolve this, there is an easy way. Vote for an election today and let the public decide, Johnson's spokesperson said in the briefing. Johnson's threat to refuse to ask leaders of the 27 EU members for an extension has provoked intense debate among lawyers and political commentators about whether he would be breaking the law.
There are 6,509 primary and secondary schools in Ebola-affected areas of Ituri, North Kivu and South Kivu provinces, with approximately 2 million children making their way back to school in these regions this year, according to United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund. The school authorities are unanimous about the need to reinforce the sanitary devices to ensure the good hygiene of the pupils and fight against this deadly epidemic. In Goma, the capital of North Kivu province, the school authorities required children to strictly follow hygiene rules. For example, wash basins are installed at the entrance of enclosure areas and at the door of each classroom to ensure children have good hygiene. After realizing the seriousness of Ebola, students seem to scrupulously comply with the hygienic provisions advocated by the school authorities. They have done their part to keep themselves away from the virus.
I wash my hands to protect myself against Ebola virus. Ebola is a disease. I will also tell friends like me to wash their hands before school, before eating, before entering the classrooms, and everywhere. When you want to do something, you have to wash your hands. I wash my hands to avoid Ebola. It's a virus that kills people. Many people think that Ebola does not exist. When it exists, it kills. My motivation is to avoid the Ebola virus that kills a lot of people. I wash my hands in the morning when I come to school, and I also have a disinfectant in my pocket to protect me.
Since the outbreak was declared on August 1st of 2018, the deadly virus has claimed 2,000 lives and infected 3,000 people in the Democratic Republic of Congo, according to the World Health Organization.
China launched its first yuan-dominated crude oil futures on March 26, 2018, culminating a year-long push to create Asia's first oil futures benchmark so as to gain greater pricing power on the global oil market.
According to the reports, U.S. non-farm payrolls added 130,000 jobs in August, which is below market expectations. The unemployment rate remained unchanged at 3.7% for the same month. As some major economic data decline, concerns are growing that the economy is slowing and may be even heading to a recession, analysts said. As uncertainty over trade policy increased, the U.S. agriculture and manufacturing have declined, with manufacturing in a technical recession. Data released by Institute for Supply Management showed that the Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index (PMI) of the U.S. fell to 49.1 in August, the first contraction in nearly 3 years. U.S. Federal Reserve Fed Chairman Jerome Powell stressed on Friday that the U.S. economic outlook is faced with significant risk and reiterated that the central bank will take appropriate action to ensure the continuous expansion of the U.S. economy. Expectations towards an interest rate cut in September by the Federal Reserve have also been strengthened. A former Afghan diplomat said U.S. President Donald Trump's calling off of peace talks with Taliban leads to more uncertainty in the war-torn country. President Trump tweeted on Sunday saying he's canceling peace negotiations with the Taliban because of a car bomb attack that claimed 12 lives, including a U.S. soldiers in Afghan Kabul on Thursday. Question and criticism followed the abrupt cancellation of a meeting between Trump and the Afghan Taliban. Omar Samad, former Afghan ambassador to France and Canada, who is now the non-resident senior fellow of Atlantic Council, shared his views on the abrupt cancellation of talks in the interview with China Global Television Network on Tuesday.
There are a set of reasons that can be contemplated. On one hand, I think that we have seen over the last few weeks differences of opinion emerge in Washington. Then you saw within Congress there are partisan and bipartisan try to figure out what is happening. And obviously, overall, within the foreign policy security establishment, including the media and the think tanks, there are all kinds of opinions that are being floated around on Afghanistan, the future of the American presence or the withdrawal of American forces from Afghanistan, which is the main cause of all of this, and what happens to Afghanistan, politically speaking, as far as the future of the Taliban either coming and negotiating a peace with the Afghans, the rest of Afghanistan, as part of an intra-Afghan process. So, and then you obviously have the region, you have the neighbors, you have all those who have some kind of stake and interest in trying to see if this country can be stabilized in one way or the other.
The cancellation contradicts the draft agreement concerning the withdrawal of 5,000 U.S. troops within 135 days from 5 bases in Afghanistan. On Sunday, the Taliban released a statement saying the U.S. credibility will be affected and its anti-peace stance will be exposed to the world. The Afghan government wasn't part of the negotiations, but hopes to now have a role in the peace process. Any future path toward peace has to be based on the will of the Afghan people. It should be Afghan-led, and it should be owned by and led by the Afghan government, said Sadiq Siddiqui, Afghan presidential spokesman.
The bill to prevent British Prime Minister Boris Johnson from taking Britain out of European Union without a deal with Brussels was given royal assent on Monday by Queen Elizabeth II. Schools in the Democratic Republic of Congo are taking measures to strengthen hygiene in a bid to protect students from Ebola virus after new school term opened on September 2nd. Oil prices rose on Monday as investors' lingering worries about oversupply were temporarily eased. That's the end of our newscast of the day, but keep watching Gabon 24 for further news.